Hello everyone, I'm Alex of Vending Machine Support. In this video, I'm going to talk about the Vend motor that is found inside the glass front vending machines of 3 major manufacturers. We're going to take a closer look at these motors as well as how to remove them from the shelves or trays. So let's get started. Here we have Vend motors of 3 of the major vending machine manufacturers. Here we have an AMS Vend motor. This is an automatic products or an AP Vend motor, as well as this is a Crane National Vendors Vend motor. Now these are all 24-volt DC Vend motors, and they may look different here at first glance, but typically they have typically the same components attached to them. So the first thing we're going to look at is going to be this little silver can here. This is going to be the electromagnetic Vend motor portion, or this is the actual motor. The remaining part of what I'm calling the motor is the actual chassis or the gearbox to the Vend motor. If we look at the automatic products Vend motor, here is the electromagnetic cam, we've got the gearbox, and then over looking at the Crane National, again, we've got the electromagnetic cam here, and the remaining part is the gearbox. Now on these Vend motors, there's a very important component. If you've seen any of my videos about drink vending machines, specifically the Dixie Narco 501E or 276 or 600E vending machine, I talk about the home switch. And that is going to be this piece here. We've got each of these 3 motors have this actual home switch, and this is a micro switch. So this one stands out a little bit easier to see since it's a black and white contrast. But on this switch, this is the home switch or motor switch. Now up against the switch is what we call a timing cam. Now this timing cam has a flat portion to the side of it, which you can see right here. Now right now on this micro switch we've got an actuator, and this actuator is in its out state. So we consider this would be home position. So when this little actuator is out, it's in its home position. Now when power is applied to the motor, the motor will start to turn, the gearbox will turn, will then begin to turn this timing cam. And as you can see, this portion here is going to be rounded. So as a rounded portion comes around, it presses the actuator into the switch and actuating or completing the circuit inside the switch. This is how the computer board knows that the Vend motor has not completed its rotation. So as this motor rotates, the flat spot comes back around, eventually stops, releasing the actuator on the switch, and then that way the computer board knows that the Vend motor has completed its rotation and that a product has vended, and to give back change is due. Basically, Vend is complete. Now the importance about this is now on a lot of snack machines, there are going to be a guaranteed delivery system. On a guaranteed delivery systems rely on some sensors that pick up the product dropping into the delivery bin, but they'll still look here at the actual home switch to know if this motor has made its full 360 rotation. But AMS at one point, when they first came on the market, they were having Vend motors that did not have home switches on there. So this is an actual AMS Vend motor. This actually came usually on Sensit 1s and Sensit 2s until they, in my opinion, got wise and decided to add the home switch back to it. But basically, home switch was removed from this motor, so it was 100% reliable, the machine was, on the drop sensor. So if the drop sensors failed, the computer board had no idea where the position of this motor was, if the product had dropped or not, if the sensors weren't working, and it was all done through a time system, let's say 15 seconds. If nothing passed by the drop sensor, product has not been delivered, allow customer to make another selection. So you can see the importance of having that home switch is going to help you as the operator make sure that the product is actually delivered, or the machine is not giving away free product. So after that, AMS did go to motors that did have the home switch on them. Now the other important piece to the puzzle here of our Vend motors are our connection points. As I mentioned earlier, these are all 24-volt DC Vend motors, and we're going to have 2 connection points. So over here, this is a little tab. If the camera picks it up, it's a little bit bigger than the other one here. Because these are DC, we're going to have a positive negative. Now on the AMS motor, the thicker side here, the fatter one, we would say, is a little bit, it's going to be our positive, and this one's going to be our negative. Now, of course, the wires are going to be the same way, so we can only stick one wire. The wire that needs to go onto this side here is going to be, will not fit onto this side here. So that's on the AMS motor. Now on the automatic products, it's going to be the same thing here. All right, we'll look over here. Yep. So we've got the smaller pin here and the larger pin. You use typically, again, the wire that's going to be going onto the smaller pin will only fit on the smaller pin, will not fit on the big pin. And I do believe that this is going to be on our AP machines, this is going to be our positive side. Now going on to Crane National, theirs is a little bit different. You can see the motor already has its connections, its positive and negative connection going to the DC motor, but what we have here is we have a set of pins here that the motors will have, the plugs will slide onto. A little bit different on automatic, Crane National vendors. The way they determine if what motor is turning, if it's a 0, B5, whatever, is going to be done some of these pins here. So they use a little bit different system to determine what selection is what. Now the last thing after the connection points is, I'm gonna go ahead and flip these motors around here, is going to be the hubs or connection points. And that's going to be these pieces right here. Now let's take a look at the automatic products one, because this one is going to be the oddball out of the two here. And this has a different style hub or point where your hub connects to. Now what is the hub? Well, the hub is the piece that connects to the Vend motor that has the helix, the coil, or the auger, whatever term you want to use it. Now I'll explain to you when we actually look at the trays and how to remove the spirals from the trays about the hub and auger, but you'll notice that this here is a bit different than we're going to be looking at is the automatic, or excuse me, the AMS motor here, and we've got kind of like a star pattern where that hub would fit into. Same thing on the Crane National vendors. It has a little star pattern where the hub would fit into. So I actually have the hubs here. So I'm gonna go ahead and put them next to their partners. So here we have, going back to the automatic products, this is a hub of the automatic products. The spiral would attach this piece here, and this piece would simply slide onto the motor like so and snap into place. This is the hub for an AMS. And again, we have a little spline here coming off the tail. I call it the tail or spline, and that would get inserted into the actual motor itself. Same thing with the Crane National, and I'll get into what this piece is when we look at the actual tray of the Crane National, but this piece fits into here like so, and snap that in place. So that gives you a quick overview of the actual anatomy per se of the Vend motor. Let's take a look at the 3 different trays, how these motors attach and why you would want to detach or to test these motors, as well to calibrate or adjust the actual shells themselves. So let's go take a look at that. So here we're looking at the back end of a tray out of an AMS vending machine. Now if you haven't already, I have some videos where I show you how to remove the trays out of the 3 major manufacturers, being AMS, Automatic Products, and Crane National Vendors. I'll link above. Be sure to check those out. Now we're looking at the back of the tray. Now this is considered a chip tray. Now this is out of a 4-wide machine, so we got 4 selections across, so we got selection number 1, 2, 3, and 4. And here we've got, now on AMS machines, this one is actually set up as a dual auger, spiral, or helix, kind of like this Crane National vendor. So that means we've got 2 spirals driving out 1 product. Now the way they do that, achieve that, is they have a Vend motor for each spiral that are coupled in the programming. So we've got a clockwise turning motor and we've got an anti-clockwise turning motor. So we go over here, this motor here is going to be a clockwise turning motor, and this is an anti-clockwise turning motor, and you can almost see the differences in colors here. But regardless if it's which direction it turns, the more important thing is here is how do we remove the motors from the machine? Because let's say we wanted to convert this to a single auger, we would need to remove some motors and just have the 4 motors turning clockwise or anti-clockwise, depending on what your turn of a helix is. So on this automatic products, AMS tray, we're going to go ahead and remove the motors out of this selection here. So the first thing we're going to locate is we need to remove the coil or the helix, and that is going to be this piece right here. So I mentioned earlier, we're going to have the spline is sticking out the back part of the motor, and how I've always removed these is you can take your fingers and put them back behind here and pull back in one quick fast motion to pop them out. Now, if that is, if you're unable to do that, you can, looking at the back here, is you got the little splines sticking out the back side of the motor, and you can squeeze those. Now it's a little bit easier when it's out, the tray is outside the machine to do this, but if you squeeze these two pieces of black plastic together and push forward, that will pull forward the helix, and then we can slide it out. Now looking at here, this is what the helix looks like in the adapter on it, and again we can remove the adapter by turning it, and this way we're going to turn it this way. Sometimes it's hard to turn, so that's where having a pair of pliers might help. Like this, I'm just going to turn that, and I'm going to rotate it around. There we go. That's too much. There we are. Doesn't work out too well. There we are. So that's how you can remove the hub from the helix or the spiral. Now, when dealing with AMS, it's stuck and hung up here. When dealing with AMS, whenever you're going to put the adapter back on, you can see you get the what I call a little pigtail here, this piece here. So we've got the little tab here is going to go, you put the bottom of this on first, you line up the pigtail, but since the curl of the pigtail, this is the corner of the pigtail right here is this side, we want to turn the hub so that the corner is sitting up against the hub. That's how it's designed. You don't want to go this way. That is incorrect. This would be incorrect because we're on the outside of the pigtail. We want to be on the inside of the pigtail like that. So that's real quick how you're going to attach the hub to the spiral or helix or coil on AMS. Now that we've got that coil out, I'm going to drop that off the side. Let's go ahead and show you how you can easily remove these motors. Now, I'm going to flip up the tray like this, and what we're going to focus on here is this little plastic tab right here. Now, these are toolless motors, so if I press down on that tab, the motor will come right out. So here I've just removed the motor. And here we can see our two connection points to the motor. So I'm very gently going to wiggle those off. I like to take a flathead screwdriver, pair of needle nose pliers, pull very gently back on these motors, and that's attached. And now we've got that one motor removed. And now we can do the same thing to the other motor. If we wanted to detach this motor, move it over if we wanted to. Now to reinsert the motor, it doesn't matter which way you'd go first. If you want to put the wires on first, I like to actually attach the motor, snap it back in place, like so, and then go ahead and reconnect the connection points. So, and now here I plugged it in backwards, see? So this one goes over here, as I can't see from this angle. That motor goes in here like this, and this wire goes in here like that. Now I've got that motor reattached. Now I wanted to grab the helix and reinsert the helix. I'm going to line up the end of the helix so it matches with the other one. Like so. And I'm just going to push in. And that's now locked in place. And that shows you how easy it is to actually remove a Vend motor off of an AMS tray. Now here we have a chip tray out of an Automatic Products 112 snack vending machine. Here we're looking at the back side of the motors. We're going to show you how to pop out the helix's adapters. Now, unlike the AMS that you just previously saw, this one actually doesn't have a spline that goes through the motor. It's just got a hub that you can pop off. So I'm going to put my two fingers behind the hub and the back of the tray and pull forward, and that will just pop the actual helix adapter off. So now, like the AMS, the helix here, the hub, that has got a little pigtail spiral, and this will actually twist off. So here we've got the pigtail of the coil and the plastic hub. And if you were to reattach this, we've got the little plastic tab here. And the opening, we put the plastic tab in first, line up the opening, and then we're going to turn it so it locks into place. Again, we're turning towards the inside of the pigtail. Of course, there's only one way we can turn this. Like on an AMS, there are two ways, but an AP, we just have one way to turn it. So that's how the hub attaches and detaches from the helix. Go ahead and set this aside. Now looking back at our Vend motor, we can see we've got some connection points. This is where our wires connect. So here we can wiggle these wires off very gently. And then here we can remove the Vend motor. Now, just like on the AMS, it's a toolless Vend motor, we've got this little plastic tab here, so if I was to push this tab this direction, the motor will pop off. Again, I'll do that here, and that pops off, come back around the wires, and then here we have the actual motor removed from the tray. And these are little feet that will lock into the notches here, and then here's that locking tab that I push down. So to reattach, I'm going to line up the notches, so like that, go in, push. Now it's locked into place. You see the plastic tab here. I'm going to reattach the wire, so here I'm going to look and make sure the right ones fit onto the right size due to the size there. So now I've got those connections points reseated. That's connected. Go ahead and grab the helix or the spiral. Now on this one, we can only attach it into two different ways here. So we've got either what I call in sync or out of sync, or we can be 180 degrees, or I don't know what I'm trying to say here, so disregard that. But once we put the tray in, we're going to go ahead and reattach the helix. So I'm going to go ahead and slide the helix onto the Vend motor, and then I'm going to push down, and that gets locked into place. So that's how easy it is to remove the motor out of an Automatic Products tray. And this tray was out of an Automatic Products 112 snack vending machine. The same concept applies if it was a candy tray. This is a chip tray here. If it was on an Automatic Products, I would say 121, 122, 123, same thing on a 131, 132, 133, as well as a 931, 932, and 933 vending machine. The motors will come out almost identical between the machines. Now let's take a look at the Crane National tray. So here we have the candy tray out of the Crane National 148 snack machine. Now this will apply to both the Crane National 147, the 157, the 158, the 167, the 168. These Vend motors are almost identical, and how the tray motors are removed is identical across those models as well. So Crane National is going to be a little bit different how their trays, how the motors come out of the tray. Now one thing to do note is that you'll notice that this tray is plastic, where the other two trays, the AMS and the AP, were metal. So I'll let you use that little bit of knowledge when looking at different machines. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to remove these motors here, or remove one of these motors. The first thing we do is we're already going to need to remove the helix or the augers. Now, the helix and augers on the Crane National actually fit into a little cup or a boot. So we'll take this selection here. Now you'll see that this has got a little colored plastic tab right here. So that plastic tab is basically a way to keep the spiral in, because once we lift that tab up, the spiral can actually pull right out of the boot. So this is a little plastic tab, and how this mounts in there is this little piece of metal goes into the boot. And I'll show it to you closer here once we got that removed. So we take that one off, we're going to need to remove the other one. Again, on chip trays on Crane Nationals, they're always going to have dual auger, dual spiral, or dual coil. So we're going to need to remove both sides. Now you'll notice there's only one motor, but using the gear system here, it's able to drive the two spirals. Let me go ahead and remove this one. So I'm going to lift up on the tab. Doing it from this angle is a bit weird. So I've got that removed. And then here's where we can start to remove the actual motor itself. So coming back down here, we've got the Vend motor like here, and so here is the plug that goes onto the back of the Vend motor. So I'm going to very gently remove that plug and get it out of the way. So now it's been disconnected from the wire. So what we're going to do is we're going to need to remove the plastic. We're going to need to remove this hub here. And just like on the AMS, the hub has a spline that goes through the timing cam of the motor, and then we can pinch this. And I've always found it a lot easier just to pull the tray out and pinch these two pieces together. That's going to push this tray, or push this hub forward. And then I can very gently pull this out from the motor, like so, and then the motor falls out, like that. Now what I was talking about, how to remove the tray before we get back over to the motor, is how these attach to the actual hub. So we've got this little, again, we got a piece of metal that's coming on the back side of the helix, and that's going to go into this little boot here. So this basically goes on like this. So it's not a snap. So if you didn't have this little plastic piece, there's a good chance that this piece comes off, because it does, it just snaps off, and you had it just like this, there's a good chance that your spiral could come loose inside the machine at some point. So it's always good to have these make sure you have these plastic pieces on the actual Vend motors themselves, or onto the helixes. I'm going to attach this correctly. Put it on here, lock that in place. So it looks like this. Now, the colors used to denote the coil count of the actual spiral when they were brand new. These, most of the time, most people, you can be looking at these are, you're gonna be buying these machines used, so these colors may not represent the actual coil count on a used machine, because things have been moved around all the time. So again, when they were new, the colors used to denote the actual coil count that was on the tray. And a coil count is going to be these gapping pieces here. So for example, this one right here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I call it a 12 count. It's not really 13, but it's a 12 count coil. And then you may have a 10 count coil, which would be a bigger gap. Smaller the number count, the bigger the gap. Higher the number count, the smaller the gap for different size products. And that's going to be available on both the on AMS machines, AP machines, and Crane Nationals. They have different coil or helix counts. And that will be probably for another video to get into that. Now going back over here, since we've got the motor removed, you can see the motor has been detached. Now what we still have over here is the opposite motor, the opposite helix drive motor. And this piece here comes off a little bit different. So we've got a little boot here, or a little holder, that's going to hold this in place. So if we wanted to pull that, we would squeeze the two pieces of plastic, pull back, and that piece would come off along with this. And now we've got both motors completely removed from this tray. So I'm gonna go ahead and reattach this back in. That's locked into place. Now, one thing to note, and this trips up a lot of new vendors all the time. If you look closely here, you can see there's a gap. I can get my finger back behind this. Now, if we go to the next selection over, I can't. So if we go to the next selection over, I can. So it's almost a back forward position. That is so that way these gears don't rub up against each other. So we need to offset the gear here from this selection as well as this selection here. So your even number selections, this way here, particularly when it's a C0, this is C1, this is C0, C2, C4, C6. But we're always going to have your left first selection of these motors are going to be pushed back. It really doesn't matter, but make sure whenever you're replacing the tray that you do a back, forward, or forward, back, or offset of your actual timing gears or your drive gears for your Crane National on the machine there. So let's go ahead and reattach the motor. So I'm going to go ahead and detach this from this, set that aside, and this is where things can get a little bit tricky. Because since these two motors are driving each other, we want to make sure that they're offset correctly. So I can take this out and I can offset this. So let's say here is the cup where the spiral will fit into. So if I pull this out and I rotate this around upside down and I put this back in, now you'll see that we're completely out of sync. Now here's the opened end of the spiral where it would attach, and if you would rotate it, now there's the open end there. So these need to be synced together almost. So typically you want to do it where the right side, if it's a candy tray, chip tray like this, you want to do the right side, usually sitting around about the left side spiral, is going to be sitting around about the 10 o'clock position, and then here you want to do this one around about the 2 o'clock position. So we'll take this out, set this to roughly about the 2 o'clock position, put this back in, line it up like so, and that should work. So I got these now in sync, and so with that in sync, I'm going to go ahead and slide the tray back down, make sure that doesn't fall out, and then here is the tricky part, because we've got to back the motor back out in order to get it in. So I'm just going to go ahead and place the motor. Should have done it this way. So now that I got it in sync, I'm going to line this up with the 2 o'clock position, slide that in, slide it back in. Now you can see how bad I'm out of sync. So I got to go back and redo this. I didn't do that correctly. This one was too far over compared to this one. So I need to correct that. Press on the spline, push that out, and we go ahead and turn this a little bit like that. And there we are. Now I feel a bit more confident in sync. This one's a little over some, so I'm going to adjust it just one more notch over. Get this not in sync. So what I'm going to do here is do this one and take that out, and then this needs to go over just one like that. And now you can see I've got them in sync, so I'm a little bit more comfortable with the way that is. So once I've got that, I'm going to go ahead and take the wire. Now these, I've got a little what I call little horns on these wires here, here, and here. So it only goes on one way. So we like to run the wire up like this, and we'll put the connection point on like that. Wires get tucked back around like so. And then here, I can go ahead and put on the right spiral. Now, we have a left and right side spiral, so we want to make sure which way they go. So from this direction, the way that these will run, so you can see we've got a spiral that's pointing off to the right here. This one's going off to the left, and we want to make sure that they're pointing in that direction. Because if you put them like this, then what happens when the motor turns, the product's going to be pulled backwards because the coils are not put in, they were putting in correctly. So we've got a clockwise and anti-clockwise turned coil, and this is stuck on my shirt. So get that, there we go. And so we're going to put them in so the end of the spirals will look like this. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. Put this one over here. In place like that, like this one in place like this. So here I've got them back in, and if I was to look, come back around to the front, turn the tray around, you'll see that the spirals are all in the right direction. So we don't want it to end up like this, specifically on these Crane Nationals. That's why you always got to pay a little bit more attention on these Crane Nationals and what you're doing. I'm going to put this hub in. All right. Put the hub in here for this one. So you don't want to be like this, because then these spirals would actually turn backwards or incorrectly. So again, take these out. Over here. And actually they're quite difficult to get in that way, but I've seen it happen so countless times. Customer will get a machine and spirals, all the products are being pulled in backwards. It's because the spirals are in there incorrectly. So we've got these two sitting like that. And last thing, since you got the tray out of the hub, or the tray out of the shelf, on Crane National trays, make sure that these little pegs here, or these rollers, are all intact, and that you do not have any cracks here. The way these things work, these things will crack right here. They'll break off, and if they break off, you got to replace the entire tray because it's plastic, and they'll crack right here. These will break off, and because they break off, you got to replace the entire tray. Kind of poor design, but hey, you know, when you're also in the business of selling parts, why doesn't one make something if it breaks, you got to replace the entire thing. But that's a topic for another video. So this is the tray out of a Crane National Vendors. This is out of a 148 snack machine. Now that you're armed with the information about how to remove a Vend motor from a tray out of the glass front vending machine, let me show you where you can use that to your ability to do some troubleshooting. For example, let's say we have a selection, we have A0 or selection 10 is not working, but selection 11 or A1 is working. What we can do is say, well, is the Vend motor bad? Well, one of the quick ways we can determine if that Vend motor is no longer functioning correctly is we can take the tray out of the machine, swap the two motors. So we've got our culprit motor, A0 or 10, that's not working, and the working Vend motor. We will swap positions of the two Vend motors, put the tray back into the machine, and then see if the problem stayed at the selection, which would have been A0 or 10 in this example, or if the problem followed the Vend motor. If the problem followed the Vend motor, you've got a bad Vend motor. So understanding of how to remove a Vend motor from a tray, you can use this to kind of quickly troubleshoot if you need to replace a Vend motor or if the problem is a little bit deeper in the machine, as in a broken wire or something wrong with the control board. So this is what I call doing some A/B testing. Now, another thing you can use once you have the understanding of how to remove a Vend motor from a tray is some of these machines, specifically like an AMS or a Crane National Vendors, is you can convert trays from a candy tray to a chip tray or vice versa by you adding or removing Vend motors from the tray. So again, with the knowledge knowing how to remove a Vend motor, this will help you understand how to do that. Well, I hope you found that information useful about the Vend motors found inside vending machines. Now, if you haven't already, I appreciate if you could like and subscribe and make sure you hit the notification bell below to be notified next time I upload a video. Also, be sure to check the description for any affiliate links I might have. This will help you support the channel at no extra cost to you. Until then, I'll see you on the next video. Take care. Hello everyone, I'm Alex of Vending Machine Support. In this video, I'm going to talk about the Vend motor found inside this, okay, all right, one more time with feeling.